Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. In today's episode, I have my new friend, Jason West, with me. And Jason and I think, are going to get up to no good here. So, Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we're going to dive into your background.
All right. Yeah. My name is Jason West. I'm one of the founders of NextGen Scientific. We have a kind of a family of companies here where we have a division devoted to drug discovery and development called Genzada Pharmaceuticals. And then we have a division devoted to dietary supplements, nutritional supplements called Hyatt Life Sciences. And so those are the two main operating arms of the businesses. And we just continue to drive the research forward and try to build our name and our brand on the nutritional supplement side. And so we're just kind of pursuing several things all at once here, all of which we're hoping can raise raise interest in what we're doing, and also eventually end up with a drug that we can put in the hands of the oncologists.
I love that. Now, let's talk about the family journey, because you are walking in the next generation. So how did you go from being a oil field chemistry company to now being basically in the life sciences space?
Yep, it really, in a word, it's all chemistry. Whether it's pharmaceuticals or oil field, our particular role within the oil field industry was chemicals, which keep the oil and gas wells in good repair, keep them flowing and producing the oil and gas that we need. It was a legacy family business. We started it in 1982. My dad is actually the founder of that business, and we built it up over the course of the next, probably 35 years, sold it in 2013. And at that time, we actually were the third largest organization within that particular part of the industry, and took the proceeds and said, hey, we're not ready to retire yet. We've still got more that we can accomplish and more we can contribute here. So let's pour ourselves into drug research. And so, Gene's my dad is a chemist and a PhD medicinal chemist, and I have a biology background, and then a law degree and an MBA thereafter. But science is very near and dear to our hearts. And my brother is a physician, so it's just kind of probably pretty sunk deep in our DNA to focus on these kinds of things. And so, yeah, that's what we've been doing for several years now is focusing on drug research. And we have two drugs that are now clinical stage. So we've finished what they call the preclinical testing, the petri dish and the mice and the rats and so forth. And we've graduated now into the human trials, which is a big step. Most folks don't get this far. So we're happy to be here, but we're not satisfied yet. We're not done yet.
Well, it's a big field, and as you mentioned before we hit record, it's winning skirmishes, because I think the ultimate war is going to always be ongoing. Now, let's talk about your dad for a minute. So thank you to Gene for his discovery. So how did he figure out, in your bio, it says there's a 1,000-year-old Middle Eastern medicinal plant. Say that 3 times fast.
Right.
How did he figure out that had pharmaceutical applications? Like, what was that moment? Because to me, that's the spark of being a visionary, is looking at something and going, wonder if.
Yep. I think this is ultimately really just a situation where you just continue to ask why. And that's probably, to me, the essence of science in general, right? Is why is something happening? Why is something continuing to go on? And so backing way up here, my dad actually immigrated to the United States in 1969. He's a Palestinian refugee. came from that part of the world in Israel, and grew up, and basically opportunity came knocking in the form of a small scholarship to a little school out here in the Midwest, actually in Nebraska. And so he came, but always kind of had in mind to go back, and his goal originally was to become a medical doctor, and then go back over to that part of the world and serve his people and help and contribute to society over there. In the meantime, actually ended up meeting my mom here in the United States. Their paths changed, and so he ended up staying here in the U.S. and focused more on chemistry. Turns out when you can't speak English very well, biology classes are pretty tough, but chemistry and math, he could do those. So thankfully, it's interesting because in that part of the world, the plant that kind of spawned all this research that we're doing now is called Arum palestinum. That's the Latin binomial for the plant. Grows wild, has been used in that part of the world for centuries. Best we could find, it was actually the 9th century AD is the first mentioning of that plant for various different medicinal uses, if you will. In fact, it's still used today. Here in the United States, if you get sick, your mom brings you a bowl of chicken soup.
Yes.
In that part of the world, you get sick and your mom brews the tea out of this plant. So she'll chop up the roots and the stems and the leaves and brew it as a tea on the stove and give it to you to drink. And it's even in use today. In fact, there's a paper, I think, published back in like 2016, studying kind of the ethnobotanicals, is what they call that. Just, unique, kind of very region-specific botanicals like this. And I think 22% of Palestinians with a cancer diagnosis still use that tea today. And wow. that's really where this all kind of began, because Gene said, well, wait a minute, why would this still be in use? If there was nothing to it, you would think that, just from an anthropological standpoint, it would have just died out to history a long time ago.
Yeah.
But 11 centuries of continuous use, there's got to be something to it. I'm a chemist. I can go tear this plant apart in my laboratory and see what's in there.
I love it.
Let's look under the hood, and so that's what he did. And lo and behold, there's some naturally occurring molecules in the plant that do in fact fight cancer. And so that's really where we, came with our research and kind of began it there.
Now, just from my recollection or understanding, cancer is a big category. Are there certain types that are more responsive to this than others?
So, boy, that is the question. And we're still definitely exploring it because, ultimately at the end of the day, everybody, really focuses first and foremost on safety. Is it safe for humans to take? Yeah. But, we're also always on the lookout for efficacy, and more specifically, why does it work? If it works, why does it work? So it's that continual question of why and how. And so, we continue to explore that mechanism of action as they call it. We think we've stumbled onto a very unique mechanism of action called super enhancer modulation. So it's very different in the way that it works versus, let's say, some of the immuno drugs such as Keytruda and Opdivo. We think that what we're doing is affecting some of what they call the super enhancer genes. These are genes that are, I guess you call it, upstream of certain downstream genes that control various genetic processes. So this is going to get a little tricky here very quickly, but the basic gist is, if you think of the genetic map as somewhat of a family tree, we're way up at the top at the granddaddy level, and we're affecting that gene, which then controls a lot of downstream processes, a lot of which have to do with cancer. And so that's where we think we're going. And it also starts to explain what we observed in our phase 1 clinical trial, which was very interesting. We seem to have clinical benefit and biological effect against multitudes of different cancers that are unrelated. These are biologically diverse cancers. Then you shouldn't have one drug that's working on all of these different cancers the way that we were working.
Well, I'm going to ask you a weird question, because I personally believe that humanity, we already know the answers to most of the big questions because we've got all these people asking why. How collaborative is the research space? Because all I can find is everybody's like hoarding their little knowledge cells. And it's like, wouldn't it be nice if there was like a central database and it said, okay, you're working on this, you're working on that, you two should collaborate?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the role that a lot of the universities play, for sure. And so you see companies like us, we're very much what you would call little pharma. We're the very small organizations that, we're on a shoestring budget, and we're very smart, and we try to be very smart, I should say, about what we pursue and how we pursue it. We don't have the budgets of the Mercks and the Pfizers and the GSKs, of course. And so we tend to, especially, in the early stages, everybody keeps their cards pretty close to the chest. Once you get patented and then your research starts to get published, and that's when more and more of the collaboration starts. And so that's one potential opportunity that we see, is we're going to continue to develop these drugs as far as we can take them, and then hopefully, big pharma comes in and says, hey, we like what you're doing, we'll invest in you, or we'll go ahead and just purchase the molecule outright. So that's really where some of that collaboration can really start to take off and energize things as well.
Yeah. No, that, to me, that's a fascinating space, because the whole point of innovation is, at some point, maybe we want to monetize it, but it's also at some point we want all of humanity to benefit, and it's a delicate dance, I would imagine.
It is. I mean, we're not trying to do this for practice. It's we definitely have shareholders, and we've got people that we answer to, and we want to deliver good results to them. But at the end of the day, so long as we make all the right moves and do what we think we can accomplish, I think everybody wins. I think, the cancer patient wins, the oncologist wins, we win, and big pharma wins too. So I think there's room in this sandbox for everybody.
I love it. Now, probably not a deep conversation for today, but we can have a little touch of it. I'm seeing the rise of crowdfunding and impact investing, where you can do small raises. They're not big, because I think the limit is 5 million. But I'm seeing some where actual users are buying into the companies to fund that growth. And I can't help but think there'd be some interesting things there to, bring that capital in, because I know for a fact that research is expensive. Annoying things like lab fees, and it's just keeping the lights on, and then God forbid you got to clean the equipment. I think it's ambitious for small pharma companies to come along, because when the big ones come along, they've got that economy of scale, whereas you're trying to find people and facilities. So if people are watching this, what would you, as a business owner, who would you like to be connected with, or who would you like to reach out and say, hey, Jason, saw you on the show, love what you're doing, here's what we can do to support you?
Yeah, it's I think you kind of nailed it right there. The crowdfunding and/or more of a what they call a Regulation A capital fundraising, which is we're actually on the cusp of launching exactly that right now. We're actually doing a more traditional fundraising right now as well, but the Regulation A is just a little bit larger than the crowdfunding model. but that's exactly what we're doing. And, the goal there is to, raise capital so we can keep going with, our current, development campaign. And I think what I would say is, look, this is an investment that, hopefully you are stepping into, almost at the very end of the race. We have, these two drugs that are in clinical stage right now, one of which we think we should be looking at opportunities for exit or monetization of one of them very rapidly. And when I say very rapidly, I mean 18 months, maybe 24 months. And that's going to be, it's actually a topical drug of all things. And we think that it has application in some precancerous conditions called actinic keratosis in particular. My brother that I mentioned, he's a physician. He's actually a dermatologist. And so he is the kind of primary developer of that drug. And
I say this sincerely, but man, your family holiday dinners must be fascinating.
It's a great mix of lots of different things. It's a lot of fun. You're right.
I'm just imagining the hot debates and the scientific rigor at the dinner table, and spouses looking on, going, "Oh God, when will it end?" I'd be right in there with the nerdy stuff, but anyways.
You're not far from the truth. That's right.
I see you, Jason. I think it would be fun. Now let's talk about the family legacy, because I am fascinated, and I have two boys that I hope one day will step in and run whatever the family business becomes. How was that transition for you? How did you go from being a lawyer to having your MBA, and then all of a sudden you're running the family business?
I think a lot of it is necessity is the mother of invention. Many times, we're small business, and at the time that I joined, we were pretty darn small in the oil and gas company that we had, and so everybody did a little bit of everything. I was fortunate enough to be exposed to kind of all phases of the business, and so it was very, very much an education for me, and I got to learn how things work at a very granular level. And I think that doing that, really, you then are able to, as the business grew and we grew, and, more people came in, and, so we just continued to hire more and more. I think when I joined in 2002, I was employee number 38. And when we got done, when we finally left the organization, I think we had 725 employees. And so at one time or another, I had done pretty much every job that was in that organization from top to bottom. And it's good training, because now, I can speak intelligently to anyone. And I think that kind of helps make quick decisions and also make good decisions, because I know that I can, what I've learned in the past, I can, communicate effectively with the folks that are doing those roles at that particular time. And I think it builds trust at the end of the day. And if they know that what they're going through day to day, then they know that you've got their best interests at heart as well. So it just, kind of just evolved over the years, and here I am. I don't know. It all happened in a flash. I can tell you that much.
Well, you're clearly doing what you love and loving what you do. I mean, that shines through. So let's talk a little bit about the health side of things, the bio. So how does that pair in or tie in with, because you have a group of companies, so that you've got I'm going to call it supplements. I'm sorry, there's probably a more proper term.
No, that's perfect. Yeah.
So how do the supplements tie in with the research? I'm guessing there's a ridiculous amount of overlap and a huge amount of separation at some point.
There really is. I mean, they do make strange bedfellows. You know, nutraceuticals or dietary supplements. These are all interchangeable terms to me. And pharmaceuticals don't tend to play in the same sandbox usually. In our case, I think it's very much a product of where we're from and how this kind of came to be. Because, you know, when you're in a town the size of ours, population 2,000, you know, there's apartment buildings that are bigger than that town, you know. And so we started our research by beginning with the tea that I mentioned earlier. And so as we brewed the tea and started to identify what was in there molecularly, it's a small town. And if you're not from a small town, you may not know this, but everyone knows your business, and everybody knows everybody, especially in a town that small. And so there's no secrets in a small town. And so we very quickly heard from, you know, friends around town, and they said, "Hey, I heard you guys are working on some cancer research with this tea, and can I get some of it? Because my nephew or my aunt or daughter or wife has you know, some form of cancer, and can I get a hold of some?" Well, these are folks we've known for 30, 40 years. We can't exactly say no. We don't want to be the bad guy at the coffee shop, you know. And so we know that, you know, it's in continuous use for 1,100 years. This recipe's been around. It's safe for people to use. But at that time, we really didn't have any inkling that it would actually be helpful to someone, you know, because we're very skeptical, you know, initially, like any good scientist should be, right? And so so we said, all right, well, here's a gallon of it, you know, let us know how it goes. I can tell you this much, it tastes terrible, so just get ready for that.
It must work then, right?
It must be very healthy because it tasted pretty awful.
There's no way it would survive 1,100 years if it tasted bad and did nothing, right?
Exactly. It's got a lot of an uphill battle for sure. And so 1,100 years later, it's still around. It must be doing something exactly right. And I'll be darned if these people didn't come back the month later and said, "Hey, can I get some more? She seems to feel better." This continued to snowball time after time after time. And then pretty soon we kind of figured out, you know, we need to make this into a product. We need to make this available on a commercial level so that people can use it. And if they're getting benefit from it, whether it's a nutraceutical or a pharmaceutical, we just want to help. And how can we be helpful to people? And so, fast forward now, many years later, and we converted the tea. It's no longer a liquid. Now it's actually a powder in a capsule. And the product that ultimately became what we sell today is called a Faya Plus. That's the Arabic word for health or life, a Faya. And it's I think rough numbers, probably about 75% of our revenue, maybe a little more. And of the buyers of that product, I think 80-90% of them are using it. We know this just because they tell us that it's being used for some form of a cancer diagnosis. And you know, we don't market it as any sort of a drug or cancer treatment of any kind, of course, but we just know that that's what's going on. And I can tell you some crazy stories off the record someday, in terms of what we've seen thus far. And it's very gratifying to be part of this.
Well, I can only imagine some of those stories, and I suspect there's an NDA I'd have to sign. But you know, you wouldn't be doing the research you're doing if not for the power of the stories on the other side. So I'll connect the dots in my own head.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It definitely emboldened us to do the research. You know, because our goal was not to set out and be a nutritional supplement company. Our focus was, let's make a drug, you know. But in the meantime, again, it just was an opportunity for us to be helpful to people. And, you know, at the end of the day, again, this just goes back to Dad. You know, when he came here to the United States, the country was good to him. You know, it accepted him, gave him opportunity. And his goal and our goal is, let's figure out ways that we can give back, you know.
I love that spirit, and I think that's regardless of the field, our visionary entrepreneur brother and sisters, we're always looking at how do we make the world a better place. And I have a young chemistry major who loves science. Don't know where he gets it from, because I like the math of it. I don't like the pouring things in a test tube. I got shaky hands. I have a bit of palsy, but I don't know. It's amazing to see what the next generation can do. Now, I have one question that might be on tangent, but how has technology, or AI in particular, impacted your particular field of research and the work you guys are doing?
You know, as we were kind of beginning our research and kind of focusing on, developing the molecule and into a compound that we could then, use, test and see if there was efficacy. It was just beginning. AI was kind of, I think, just beginning to be utilized in various different ways in drug discovery. Just in a very few short years, it's really become much more part of the conversation. And obviously, it's just speeding things up. I mean, there's just tremendously more, that AI can do and kind of test in a hypothetical way. We have some AI software where we run it through computational biology and come up with different compounds. Here's what I would say, and this is somewhat the antithesis maybe of the AI movement. Our lead drug, our flagship drug, is made up of 3 APIs, 3 active pharmaceutical ingredients. Early on, we got connected to just an extremely capable consultant researcher gentleman. He's an oncologist and has his fingerprint on pretty much every cancer drug that's out there right now. His name is Dr. Daniel von Hoff, and just a gem of a man. And he looked at the research that we had been doing, and he said, "How in the world did you come up with this combination of these 3?" And he flat told us, this is the interesting part. I have been looking at 2 of these myself and testing them in combination with one another. Yeah. But the third is not considered bioactive. And nobody would have put that together. Nobody would have said, "Hey, let me put this into the equation as well." As a result of that, I think that starts to kind of demonstrate where the limitations of AI might be, because in nature, that compound was occurring in a fairly significant percentage of the plant. Yeah. And so from our standpoint, we said, well, big part of the plant, let's make sure it's part of our product as well. Didn't really think about the idea that it's not bioactive. Turns out it actually is bioactive, but none of the literature would say that. And so it's interesting because AI is only taking what is kind of known and putting it together maybe in some novel ways. Yeah. What about the unknowns? Yeah. And from that, I wonder whether or not, if we rely exclusively on AI, does that skip over a lot of really valuable combinations or compounds that we would not otherwise have, wouldn't find otherwise with AI alone?
Well, it's a fascinating question, because to me, I believe that the cures to all that ails us can be found somewhere in nature. We just haven't found the right combinations or the right doses. But I think one of the things I'm fascinated by is how AI can augment the researchers with more what if type stuff. But also, there is always that human curiosity. I am an avid user of AI, but it will never replace our ability to just ask why. Yeah. And my other favorite question is why not? I annoy a lot of people because you can't predict which one's coming out, but there's always one of those 2 playing with stuff. And, I think it'll allow us to do some really cool things, but we're still going to need the human saying, these are the things worth looking at. Because again, AI either looks at everything or looks at nothing. It's never quite as specific as these three things. Why is that there? What does it do?
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you're exactly right. And I think the why not is an equally important question that should always be there too.
Well, I assume that in your lab, why not is as common as why, but it's probably not stated as loudly or as forcefully. It's probably more of a why not? Like it's more of a pondering question. Now, Jason, I could talk to you all day, but I promise I won't. Where can people go to connect with you, find out more about the work you're doing, and follow the journey? Because to me, 2 new cancer drugs sounds like a very worthwhile thing to pursue.
Absolutely. So we have our NextGen Scientific organization. Our website is actually investinnextgen.com. And that's really just more about the fundraising that we're conducting right now. But the businesses each have their own individual websites as well, of course. HyattLifeSciences.com. Hyatt, just like the hotel, except it's no relation, of course. And then Genzada.com is our drug discovery work. And so, we're happy to talk to anybody. I think our phone numbers are listed on there if you want to call or email in or anything like that. If there's questions that come up, we talk to people from all over the world every day. So we'd be happy to converse with anybody about anything that we're doing.
Awesome. And I know you've got a very prolific LinkedIn profile as well. So
and LinkedIn, yes. Sorry, I'm pretty lousy about social media. My girls give me a hard time that I still haven't really figured out Instagram yet, but I do have a LinkedIn handle as well. So I'm there under just Jason West.
Love it. And I'll make sure if anybody can't find you for some reason, reach out to me and I'll make sure they connect. Jason, I want to thank you for sharing your family story and the work you're doing. I'm just fascinated what visionaries are doing in the world, and I can see big things coming your way. So thank you for being on the show.
Amen. From your lips to God's ears, Jeff. Appreciate it very much.